So I'm trying a new recording strategy where I don't take forever to get to points and I don't end up repeating things. So I'm going to be doing just that. I'm just going to be enjoying myself, letting my ideas come out of my mouth at random and sporadically, and you guys are just going to have to put it together yourselves and be with it, because I'm doing this because I'm a weirdo and an anxious random teenager who's got nothing better in his life than to make videos on topics that aren't really relevant, and I'm talking too fast because, well, whatever, I'm anxious. Hello Internet, I'm Oliver Worley from Ikarus' workshop, and I just completely lost myself in that intro. I recorded a video just a second ago, and I only realised that the audio wasn't on, and it was like a 23-minute video, my shortest one yet, and yet I got so many good points out, and I was angry and frustrated, and so that was just me laying a couple of things out. The point is, I've done a rehearsal. Let's say I've done a rehearsal for this one. But what I intend to do is basically a new series where I kind of tackle individual lessons within one of my favourite books that my dad got me, or maybe I just found it on the bookshelf, I can't remember. But I want to tackle the individual lessons of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And it's because I found that it's my favourite book. I've spent, years reading through pages, just getting my head around different lessons and applying them to different situations. And though I am far from a master at them, trust me, I'm far from a master. I've thought a lot about different aspects, and I thought I just want to talk about it. I want to see what I can come up with and present it to the world, and that's just what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is just tackle it one kind of instance at a time. I'll review it before I make the video, and just kind of decide on a section that I think has enough content to kind of talk about for a little while. And if you stay and watch, you learn something about the art of war, I guess. But as always, it's necessary to take into the context of the situation, and so I'm going to be looking at the foreword. Like James Clavell, the one who translated this book and wrote the foreword, I thought it had some real strong influence on it. Every so often he'll write little paragraphs or subtext after a certain point that's made by Sun Tzu, applying a context or consideration of where this situation may have happened in real life, or explaining the message in a more contemporary fashion. And I really like those little things that just clear things up or let you explore and expand your mind. And so I'm doing this and I'm going to try and give Clavell, a fair kind of say in this picture. I don't know anything about Clavell at all. I know that he translated this book and wrote the foreword, and that's it. I haven't looked up anything. Every idea is just coming from my mind as I speak. So, but I'm going to try and do it justice, and I thought I'd start by taking a look at an example that he put in the foreword, and just reading it through and seeing what lessons we can learn from it, and about what the book we can kind of adjust and learn from. So here goes. I'm just going to read the section that I want to address. It's a little story about Sun Tzu taken on some sort of military role, but I'll read it and you'll get your head around it, I guess. Sun Tzu, whose personal name was Wu, was a native of the Qi state. His art of war brought him to the notice of Hulu, king of Wu. Hulu said to him, "I have carefully perused your 13 chapters. May I submit your theory of managing soldiers to a slight test?" Sun Tzu replied, "You may." The king asked, "May the test be applied to women?" The answer again was the affirmative. So arrangements were made to bring 180 ladies out of the palace. Sun Tzu divided them into 2 companies and placed one of the king's favourite concubines at the head of each. He made them all take their spears in their hand and addressed them thus: "I presume you know the difference between front and back, right hand and left hand?" The girls replied, "Yes." Sun Tzu went on, "When I say eyes front, you must look straight ahead. When I say left turn, you must face your left hand. When I say right turn, you must face towards your right hand. When I say about turn, you must face right around towards the back." Again the girls assented. The words of command having been thus explained, he set up the halberds and battle axes in order to begin the drill. God, I've already lost myself, and I've a couple of seconds in. Then to the sound of the drums he gave the order right turn, but the girls only burst out laughing. Sun Tzu said patiently, "If words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, then the general is to blame." He started drilling them again, and this time gave the order left turn, whereupon the girls once more burst into fits of laughter. Then he said, "If words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, the general is to blame. But if his orders are clear, and the soldiers nevertheless disobey, then the fault is with their officers." So saying, he ordered the leaders of the two companies to be beheaded. Now the King of Wu was watching from the top of his raised pavilion, and when he saw that his favourite concubines were to be executed, he was greatly alarmed and hurriedly sent down a message. "We are now quite satisfied with our general's ability to handle troops. If we are there's a missing letter there. Benefit of these two concubines, our meat and drink will lose their savour. It is our wish that they shall not be beheaded." Sun Tzu replied, even more patiently, "Having once received His Majesty's commission to be general of his forces, there are certain commands of His Majesty which, acting in that capacity, I am unable to accept." Accordingly, and immediately, he had the two leaders beheaded and straight away installed the next pair in order as leaders in their place. When they had been done, the drum was sounding the drill once more. The girls went through the evolutions, turning to the right or to the left, marching ahead or wheeling around, kneeling or standing with perfect accuracy and precision, not venturing to utter a sound. Then Sun Tzu sent a messenger to the king. "Your soldiers are now properly drilled and disciplined and ready for your Majesty's inspection. They can put to any use that the sovereign may desire. Bid them go through fire and water. They will not now disobey." But the king replied, "Let your general cease drilling and return to camp. As for us, we have no wish to come down and inspect the troops." Thereupon Sun Tzu said calmly, "The king is only fond of words and cannot translate them into deeds." After that, the King of Wu saw that Sun Tzu was one who knew how to handle an army and appointed him general. In the west, Sun Tzu defeated the Chu state and forced him away into Ying, the capital. To the north, he put fears into the state of the Qi and Qin and spread his fame abroad, the feudal princes. And Sun Tzu said in The Might of the Kingdom. Now, I am terrible at reading, but I hope you got the gist of that. Now I'm going to have a drink and be straight back because I am parched. Water is the nectar of the gods. You can't ask for any better drink that was ever invented. Whoever invented it, you're a genius. It's brilliant. But this story is what I want to address, and it has a number of kind of faculties that are worth considering. Now, the first one that I thought was important in any state of authority is the kind of... Oh, I'm going to edit that out. So the first kind of faculty that is addressed, or at least the most major one, is the difference between power and authority. And it's established quite quickly that there is a difference, though it doesn't say explicitly within the passage. Typically, I like to apply by this definition that I created myself, or at least have heard it from someone. But the idea that power and authority are actually separate things. Authority is the ability to control things, but that is handed to you via a built-in structure or through someone else giving you a position, not necessarily earned. Whereas power is, regardless of the official position you hold, you have the ability to control that is earned through your own abilities. Essentially, authority is given and power is taken. And it's very much like the difference between one of those popular kids at school and the guy that just happens to be friends with everyone. The popular kids are kind of in that position because of their fancy car or good families or good clothes, but in reality, they're just flimsy and they don't really hold anything. Or the school prefect who signed up and got the fancy tie, but in reality holds no power. Versus the guy that has all the friends, in which case, he's going to have a joy at school because he's got the power here, He earned those friends, he put his effort in, and, he gets along with everyone, and now he really doesn't have to worry about, getting caught out. The popular kids, like him enough to leave him be, and the prefects, if they do challenge him, no one will believe it, The idea is power and authority are different, and in this it establishes that quite clearly. For example, the king should really be seen as the power in this kind of front, and yet Sun Tzu after taking charge of his soldiers and agreeing to the display and demonstration, basically disobeys him at every turn, or at least antagonizes him at every turn. When he's to behead the concubines, he goes through with it despite the king telling him not to do just that. And Sun Tzu even says that there are certain commands of His Majesty which, acting in that capacity, the capacity of the general, he is unable to accept. Basically, he cannot obey the king if he has been given control of the military, because the king's actions are inherently detrimental to that very premise. Another idea is the women, the concubines who were elected as like leaders of those troops, really had no power. They weren't officers as such. They had no experience, no training. They hadn't earned that position. They were only put there because they were the highest ranking women, like, generally. And so when it came to the removal of them, they fell just as quickly as they were risen. They were reliant on Sun Tzu's abilities. Now, had they proven themselves valuable to Sun Tzu to a point where he wouldn't want to behead them, okay, then that would be a completely different scenario. Had they earned the power of the position, they were essentially just pawns in the system, as it were. The authority really gave them nothing, and that's just important to consider. Understanding this difference means that you understand who to obey, when to obey. Out of all of these people, who would you listen to? I'd end up listening to Sun Tzu personally, because he can have you beheaded. He can protect you from being beheaded depending on the actions you take. And that's regardless of what their king or the concubines say. And it's basically saying power is an important faculty that needs to be considered, not just the official state in which people be. That's kind of like the first premise that I think it exists. The next one is the idea of discipline. The idea that certain kind of procedures and threats can put people into the right kind of decisions. And now Sun Tzu made it quite clear initially that the commands that he was given were clear. Okay, I presume you know the difference between front and back on right hand and left hand. The girls assented. They said yes. They knew the difference. So when he gave them the orders and made sure they understood, okay, it was their error, not his, their error, that led to their, fault and their execution in this sense. Now, we can obviously argue about the actual, capacity in which Sun Tzu responded, but the fact that he responded is what I'm coming at. We've got to understand that essentially he understood the value of having a disciplined individual in his military unit, and was willing to make an example to ensure the discipline of the others. Sometimes a sacrifice is necessary to protect the whole. We live in a world where things are so uncertain and there is cost to every action that many times people always hold this ideal, like this paladin or of trueness and brilliance, but that is, while admirable to aim for, is is basically never going to be achieved, just because of the way the world functions. And so Sun Tzu in this is showing that though he would have preferred the discipline to have been achieved through some other fashion, it's not something that could have been done just because of the lives that the women lived beforehand. You've got to understand, this is not a commentary on the difference between men and women. This is not a example of men being strong and women being weak, or vice versa. That's not its point. Had they replaced the women with peasants or noble aristocrats or foreigners, it wouldn't have mattered. Okay, the idea is they were previously inexperienced with combat, okay, and had their own kind of social structure, and yet it was broken down and completely restructured under Sun Tzu's military content. Sun Tzu had an ideal that he needs for his military, okay, and he had to completely deconstruct them and reconstruct them to best fit his needs. And that's something we can learn, we can understand, we can use that premise. If we need a group of people to function, okay, we've got to understand to break down the previous system that they had before we can re-establish it and ground it in ours. He did that through the execution of their two leaders. Okay, but we can do that in some other way, be it punishment or positive reinforcement. Whatever way, the idea is we've got to re-establish and ground the kind of system in which we're working. The next thing that he presents is the understanding that success is not Success is not always inevitable, and failure is not always deserving of immediate punishment. Although he made it clear that the girl should understand the principles and the rules that he's presenting, being able to turn left and right and understanding what those commands mean, when the first instance occurred of their failure to obey that, he took the blame directly. He said, if words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, then the general is to blame. The implication there is he's assuming that they did not understand these rules, and so he put the blame on himself in that instance. Now, I believe it was more of like a test, personally. Those orders did not seem particularly complicated, okay? And I believe that those women did understand, they just weren't taking it seriously. However, the premise is he was willing to essentially give them a second chance. And only upon having the clear clarify. I mean, he clarified that they were wrong. He made sure that they understood they were wrong, okay? While taking the blame himself, but he made sure that the instance and the actions they said were wrong, and basically gave them a second chance. He offered them to redo and retry in that instance. Now, when they failed again, okay, they failed simple commands after being told exactly how to fix it, okay? That is where he drew the line. He realized, I need something to grind home that these women have to obey properly. And so he ordered the beheading. But the point is, he still gave a second chance. A lot of time we come into movies or games or whatever media, and we'll come to the realization that there's a character there that is completely mistrusting, and they seem like the most hardcore survivalist on the planet. Okay, I don't think that's what they would actually be. I reckon someone that mistrusts so much will probably end up dead quite quickly, because you can't rely. The amount of information each individual have in each individual is minuscule. You've got to rely on the people above you and the people below you to convey correct information, just as much as those rely on you to uphold and do your best part. The general relies on his king to ensure that he has soldiers, and the soldiers rely on the general to make sure that they're in the right place. Okay, and then the general relies on the soldiers to fight hard, and the king relies on the generals, that the generals will do their best and organize the troops well. The idea is it's a mutual trust. They're all relying on each other, all up and down the ideas. And so when someone mistrusts someone to an extent that they cannot have any trust at all, it essentially leads that you are simply only ever an individual and can only ever act in that strength. There's this idea that 2 people working together work with about the strength of 3 people, and 4 people working together work with about the strength of 8 people. The idea is that when they work in a team, they work more efficiently. There's a more efficient kind of contribution to these ideas. And so 10 individuals, okay, who mistrust each other can work only as strong as 10 individuals, but 10 people who trust each other to do one thing, the engineering specialist focusing on engineering, and the others, a scavenger focusing on food, means that they can all focus on what they're strong at and get not only do they work more effectively in that field, but they can also improve themselves in that field. Essentially, they become specialists. And this is something that also needs to be understood and considered ourselves. We've got to understand who is the specialist in each field. Who do I trust? Do I trust my manager to make that best decision? Okay, and it's important to make that understanding. If they're a bad manager and you don't trust them to make that best decision, either they won't last long, okay, or you've got to do something about that situation. Okay? If the soldiers realize their general is bad, the general is losing that war and is sending them again and again and again into stupid, decisions, and they're dying left, right, and center, then the soldiers need to remove that general, and the general, upon realizing that he's screwing up, should step down or adjust strategy. There should be constant acknowledging of mistakes, understanding the trust above and below, and then adjusting your current procedure to best fit this new instance. Just an observation that this text, I think, picks up quite well. I may have kind of gone off topic there, but I think I got round to the point, I hope. If I didn't, I will review the video and probably do nothing, because God, I can only think so much, guys. I like thinking a lot, but I can't overdo it. Another point that Sun Tzu presents is the idea of deeds over words. Okay? Now, I like Machiavelli. I don't like Machiavelli, but I like reading The Prince, specifically by Machiavelli. And it's the idea that words carry a lot of power and weight, and are very valuable in terms of manipulating individuals. However, when it does come to building up trust or actually achieving anything, actions are the best way to ensure that idea. If you're signing a peace treaty, okay, laying down all your weapons and withdrawing your army is more insurance than just saying we'll lay down all our weapons and withdraw our army. And so both Machiavelli and Sun Tzu hold merit in this situation, and not because they're conflicting, because they're actually complementing each other in this premise. Sun Tzu was saying that I really don't care what you're doing, King, if you're not upholding your ideas of of understanding the military engine. Okay, then my respect and trust for you is just basically not going to exist. And the king understood that. The king is only fond of words and cannot translate them to deeds. Sun Tzu values deeds. He values the king actually acting on his care for the military engine. And I think that's important to understand. When we make a promise, it's better for us to fulfill that promise, than just promise to fulfill it. Promises are valuable, and I put a lot of value in the weight of words. But the weight of words are strengthened 100-fold if they are also strengthened with the weight of actions. Now, actions themselves might present certain things, but a lot of times they can be misinterpreted. So they kind of have to be considered together. Actions and words, words, actions. My lisp is getting the better of me now. Actions and words are important considerations and need to be addressed together to have the best outcome. You say you're going to go north, okay? If that's a deception, you go south. If it's not, you go north, okay? The idea is they need to work in conjunction to essentially best achieve results. And while that's an extrapolation on this very short line that Sun Tzu says, or Clavel recalls, the idea is still present and still worth considering. Actions and words are worth noting. And kind of an interesting thing that I thought I'd just throw in the end is the fact that the king didn't actually ever address Sun Tzu other than in the beginning in person. The beginning, okay, when nothing had been proved and no decision had ever come to fruition, okay, Hulu said to him directly, okay, I have carefully perused your 13 chapters, blah 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 blah. And yet every other instance when Sun Tzu made action and the king responded, he always sent a messenger. What that shows is a lack of respect for the general, or a increasing fear, but by the appear of it is a lack of respect or a lack of care. Almost like his request for the experiment initially just wasn't true and didn't really exist at all. It was more of a way of piquing or getting the general in his own military because of the renown of success, but not actually caring about the principles that happened. He said he carefully perused your 13 chapters, and while that might be true, it doesn't it doesn't show any sort of furthering of interest later on. The king doesn't seem to care, actually. He cares about his concubines, and he cares about his image when he gets, his image is damaged by Sun Tzu saying the king is only fond of words, or it's just the fact that I don't think the king actually gave a damn about Sun Tzu's principles despite having perused them. And just an important consideration, I think, this king does not seem to be an especially competent one, competent enough to choose Sun Tzu. And while I might go into analyze the Hulu dynasty later on, when I kind of address and use Machiavelli's principles, but right now I'm just not especially. I don't have a lot of respect for the king presently. But yeah, that's just something that came to mind. I didn't script that or anything, just what occurred to me there and then. So yeah, I guess that's well, I'll sign out. To the algorithm.